The silver wind drifted quietly through the asteroid belt, its engines humming low to avoid detection. Captain Reyna Ortiz stood at the viewport, her eyes scanning the scattered rocks and frozen worlds. Somewhere out here, she knew, pieces of humanity still lived. Elias Kane, the smuggler who had rescued her, walked up beside her. He carried a datapad filled with encrypted messages. His gray beard was unkempt and his eyes looked tired, but there was still a spark of mischief in them. "You should see this," he said, handing her the pad. "It's not much, but it's something." Rena scrolled through the data. Messages written in broken code flickered across the screen. Some were little more than a single line, "We endure." Others were longer, describing stolen supplies or safe hiding places. Every message came from a different world. Mars, Europa, Titan, even ruined Earth itself. Her chest tightened. Humanity was not silent. Humanity was whispering. "They're waiting for someone to answer," Elias said quietly. Rena turned to him, her voice steady. "Then we'll answer. If no one else will, we will." The secret meeting days later, the Silver Wind docked at a hidden station carved into a hollow asteroid. The place had once been a mining hub, but now its tunnels were filled with refugees, mechanics, and fighters who had escaped the Valar. The air smelled of oil and metal. Sparks flew as engineers welded old parts together, trying to breathe life into broken machines. Children played in the shadows, their laughter thin but real. In a dim chamber deep inside the station, a group of leaders gathered around a round table. There were soldiers in patched uniforms, scientists with tired eyes, and colonists carrying the weight of their people on their shoulders. When Rena entered the room, whispers spread. Some recognized her immediately. Captain Ortiz, the woman who had commanded the Unity's flame, a survivor of the final battle. An older colonist stood. "You saw Earth's orbit fall," he said. "You know better than anyone how hopeless this is." "Why are you here?" Rena met his gaze firmly. "Because hopeless doesn't mean finished. The Valar think we're beaten. They think we're quiet. But every whisper I've read says otherwise. Humanity is still alive. And if we can stand together, we can fight again." The room grew silent. People exchanged uncertain glances. Then a young engineer spoke up, her voice trembling but bold. "I've been rebuilding an old freighter into a warship. It's not much, but it's something." A soldier added, "On Mars, we've hidden stockpiles of weapons, buried before the invasion. They haven't found them." One by one, voices rose. Stories of secret caches, hidden ships, safe tunnels, coded messages. Small sparks scattered across the dark, and Rena felt her heart swell. "This is how it begins," she said softly. Sparks in the ashes. The first mission, the leaders agreed to test their strength. If they could strike once, just once, they could prove humanity was not broken. The target was a supply convoy drifting between Jupiter's moons. Guarded by only 2 enemy cruisers, it seemed small compared to the massive fleets of the Valar. But to humanity, it was everything. Rena volunteered to lead. "I've commanded fleets," she told them. "But today, I'll command hope." The resistance gathered what they had. A handful of old freighters with hidden weapons, 2 refitted mining ships, and a single corvette barely holding together. The ships were patched, dented, and weak compared to the sleek enemy cruisers. But their crews were determined. On the bridge of the corvette Dawnfire, Rena looked around at her ragtag crew. Farmers, miners, and former soldiers filled the seats. Many had never fought in space before. Yet every face carried the same fire. "This is not just a raid," Rena told them. "This is proof. Proof that humanity still fights. Proof that we're not finished. The Valar think we're ashes. Let's show them the fire still burns." The ambush, the convoy appeared on sensors. 3 massive supply ships escorted by 2 enemy cruisers. Their hulls glowed with alien light, smooth and sharp like blades. Rena's fleet hid among the asteroids, silent and still. She waited until the convoy drifted into the belt. Then, with a sharp motion of her hand, she gave the order. The resistance ships burst from hiding. Weapons fired. Missiles streaked through the void. The enemy cruisers reeled in shock. The Valar had expected silence, not defiance. The Dawnfire darted between rocks, firing bursts at the supply ships. One freighter released mining drones, reprogrammed to attach and explode against the enemy hull. Another vessel, barely holding together, rammed itself into a cruiser's flank, tearing open its shields. Push them, Rena shouted, gripping the arm of her chair. Show them humanity's fury. The battle was chaotic, uneven. Resistance ships were fragile, breaking under enemy fire. But they fought with wild courage. They used every trick, every desperate move, every ounce of human unpredictability, and in the end it was enough. The first cruiser shattered in a burst of flame. The second retreated, engines sparking, unwilling to face such reckless fury. The convoy was theirs. A victory in darkness. When the battle ended, cheers erupted across the resistance channels. The convoy's supplies, food, fuel, weapons were now in human hands. It was not a great victory by galactic standards, but to the scattered survivors it was everything. Proof that humanity could strike. Proof that humanity was still dangerous. On the bridge of the Dawnfire, Rena smiled for the first time in months. Her crew was battered, her ship scarred, but their spirits blazed brighter than ever. Let the enemy believe we're broken, she said softly. Every time they believe it, we'll remind them we're not. The enemy reacts on the Valar command ship. Lord Karvek received the report with cold fury. Human raiders attacked our convoy, an officer said. 1 cruiser destroyed. Supplies stolen. Karvek's glowing eyes narrowed. Impossible. Their fleets are gone, their colonies broken. They cannot fight. Yet they did. The officer answered. Karvek turned to the stars, silent for a long time. Then perhaps, he said slowly, we have underestimated them. But deep inside, he dismissed the thought. One spark was not a fire. To him, humanity's act was nothing but the last twitch of a dying creature. He would soon learn otherwise. The growing flame news of the raid spread across the hidden channels. On Mars, resistance cells cheered. On Europa, miners swore to join. On Earth itself, whispers grew louder. We are not alone. We are not finished. Every small act of defiance gained new meaning. Every hidden weapon felt heavier with possibility. The sparks were spreading. Rena stood again before the leaders of the resistance, her voice steady. This is only the beginning. They thought we were quiet. They thought we were finished. But humanity is not finished. Humanity is waiting. The room filled with nods, with fire in the eyes of those who had once despaired, and so, in the cold darkness of space, a truth began to shine. Humanity had fallen. Yes, but the ashes were alive with sparks, and sparks, given time, become fire. The asteroid belt was alive with movement. Ships of every shape and size slipped between the rocks, carrying people, supplies, and secrets. Humanity was no longer silent. They were a whisper that had grown into a low, persistent hum, a hum that threatened to become a roar. Captain Rena Ortiz stood on the bridge of the Dawnfire, staring at a display that mapped the scattered pockets of human survivors. Dots flickered across the system, representing colonies, outposts, and hidden bases. Some were barely functioning. Others were strong, with weapons and engineers ready for action. They're all out there, Rena said softly, almost to herself. Waiting, watching, hoping we can bring them together. Elias Kane, standing beside her, grunted. It's a start. Not everyone will answer the call, though. Some are too scared. Some think it's pointless, Rena shook her head. Then we'll show them it's not pointless. Fear doesn't last against hope. The message network using the old transmitter they had recovered, Rena and Elias began sending coded signals to every hidden human enclave. Messages traveled through deep space like invisible threads, connecting miners on Europa, engineers on Titan, and scavengers hiding in the rings of Saturn. Every message carried a simple promise. You are not alone. Humanity is still here. Join us and we can fight. Responses came slowly at first. A miner on Ganymede reported seeing a small convoy of enemy ships fall to a surprise ambush. Engineers on Phobos offered to repair old warships. Farmers on Earth sent supplies disguised as ordinary shipments. Each reply added confidence. Each reply strengthened the invisible web of resistance. Rena smiled as she read the latest response. We're becoming more than scattered survivors, she said. We're becoming a network. Elias leaned over. A network, yes. But networks need leaders, and leaders need plans. Do you have one? Rena's eyes glinted. Yes, step 1, show the enemy that humanity is not helpless. Step 2, unite the scattered pockets. Step 3, strike where it hurts the most. The rebuilding of ships in a hollowed asteroid near Jupiter, Engineers worked day and night to restore old freighters into war-ready ships. Sparks flew and metal groaned under the force of welding and hammering. They used whatever they could find: engines from destroyed vessels, weapons from abandoned bases, armor plates from mining equipment. For many, it was the first time they had touched a weapon. Yet the determination in their eyes was clear. They were not building ships to surrender. They were building hope. Among them was a young engineer named Lyra Vance. Her hands were blackened with grease, her hair tied back with a scrap of cloth, and her face streaked with sweat. "We'll finish this," she told her team. "It won't be much, but it will be enough to remind them. Humans don't die quietly." When Rena visited the asteroid, she watched the team work with admiration. "You're building more than ships," she said. "You're building proof that we are still alive." Lyra grinned. "Then let's make sure the Valar see it." The growing threat. The Valar had begun to notice something strange. Supply convoys vanished, outposts went silent, and small fleets appeared in unexpected places. Each time they were met with ambushes, sabotage, or sudden attacks that left them baffled. Lord Karvek paced his command deck, his glowing lines pulsing with irritation. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "The humans are finished. Their fleets destroyed. Their colonies occupied. Yet our ships are being attacked at every turn." An officer hesitated. "They're organized, my lord." "More than we thought. Smaller attacks, yes, but coordinated. It's as if they're learning." Karvek's sharp eyes narrowed. "Learning? Humans are not known for patience or planning." And yet, he stopped. The thought was dangerous. Dangerous because it implied that humans were not just surviving. They were adapting. And adaptation was the first step toward something greater. Training the resistance back on the Dawnfire, Rena knew they needed more than ships. They needed trained crews. She began a program to teach civilians to operate the refitted vessels. Miners learned navigation. Engineers learned weapon systems. Farmers learned tactics. It was grueling work. Mistakes could mean death. Yet every lesson strengthened the crew. Every drill built trust. Every success, however small, ignited hope. Rena watched a young trainee struggle to control a weapon system. "You'll get it," she encouraged. "Remember, precision is just patience in action. Humans have patience when it matters most." By the end of the week, the once scattered survivors were beginning to move as one. They were learning to anticipate each other's actions, to coordinate attacks, and to trust in the strength of their unity. The first coordinated strike. With the training complete, Rena decided it was time for the next test, a coordinated strike against a Valar forward base near Saturn's rings. The base was lightly defended but vital. It supplied enemy forces across the system. 3 small fleets, each with patched and refurbished ships, moved out from separate hidden stations. Sensors picked up the base's defenses. The Valar believed no human fleet would dare approach. They were wrong. Rena's fleet attacked from behind a field of asteroids, striking the supply docks while Lyra's team launched drones to disable the communications array. Other human ships hit enemy supply lines, cutting off reinforcements before they could arrive. The battle was tense. Enemy ships were faster and stronger, but humans were unpredictable. They used maneuvers no one expected, creating confusion and seizing every opportunity. By the end, the base was crippled, and the human fleets retreated before the Valar could counterattack. Victory and inspiration. When word of the strike reached other human enclaves, it spread like wildfire. On Mars, miners cheered and promised to join the next fleet. On Europa, engineers offered to supply weapons. Even on Earth, quiet acts of defiance grew bolder. Sabotaged factories, stolen equipment, and messages left for others to find. Rena addressed her crews over the secure network. "Today we have proven that humanity is not finished. Today we have proven that the enemy does not understand us. We are scattered, yes, but we are strong when we stand together, and this is only the beginning." Elias, standing beside her, added, "The enemy thought we were weak. They thought we were silent. Let them see the storm we are becoming." The enemy's growing concern. Lord Karvek stared at the reports coming in. One by one, his officers detailed human strikes, sabotage, and attacks. His eyes narrowed. "They adapt," he said finally, more to himself than to anyone else. "They learn. They anticipate. And they spread like fire." An officer hesitated. "My lord, should we send reinforcements?" Karvik shook his head. Not yet. Let us observe. If they are so clever, we will see it soon. And then, we will strike harder. But deep inside, Karvik felt a rare unease. The humans were no longer predictable. They were no longer just survivors. They were becoming something else. A force that refused to be broken. A spark in every world in hidden tunnels on Titan. A miner repaired an old freighter, smiling as he remembered the latest news. They did it. They struck the Valar. We can do this too. On a moon near Neptune, a small group of children listened to the story of the raid, eyes wide with excitement. When we grow up, we can fight too, one said. Even on Earth, in occupied cities, whispers of defiance grew louder. Graffiti appeared on walls, a simple symbol of a rising sun, representing humanity's unbroken spirit. Every spark, every act of courage, was a reminder. Humanity had fallen, yes, but it was not finished. The gathering stormed back on the Dawnfire. Rena stood before the viewport once again, staring at the stars. Every world has a spark now, she said, and when sparks gather, they become a storm. The Valar thought they had crushed us. They thought we were nothing, but soon they will see the storm, Elias nodded. And storms are hard to ignore. The stars beyond the viewport seemed brighter than before. The scattered humans hidden across the system were no longer silent. They were ready to rise. And in the darkness of space, a quiet but unstoppable truth began to take shape. Humanity was gathering. Humanity was learning. Humanity was preparing to fight. The Valar had been warned, but they had no idea what was coming. The stars were quiet, but the space around Jupiter's orbit was anything but. Scattered fleets of human ships glided from hidden bases, small but precise, each one carrying the hardened survivors of a broken humanity. They were no longer ragged and afraid. They were organized, clever, and full of resolve. Captain Reyna Ortiz stood on the bridge of the Dawnfire, eyes sharp on the tactical display. Around her, the hum of machinery and the quiet chatter of trained crews filled the ship. Every freighter, corvette, and converted mining vessel was ready. Today they would strike. Report, she commanded. Elias Kane, standing at her side, handed her a datapad. The Valar supply station near Saturn is our primary target. It coordinates most of their patrols and shipments in this sector. Hit it hard and we disrupt their operations for months. Rena nodded. Good, let's remind them that humanity is not done. Let's remind them what it means to underestimate us. The first moves, the human fleets moved like shadows among the asteroids, approaching the enemy station from multiple directions. Rena's voice was calm but firm as she coordinated the attack. Dawnfire led the main strike. Lyra, your engineering crew will disable communications. The rest of the ships, cut off reinforcements and secure the surrounding fields. Remember, we are precise, not reckless. It was a delicate balance. Their ships were fragile, their numbers few, yet their tactics were cunning. The Valar, massive and confident, believed themselves untouchable. The first shots fired silently through space as drones and missiles found their targets. Supply pods exploded in brilliant bursts, and communications arrays went dark. The enemy scrambled, but they were unprepared for the speed and coordination of the human attack. The chaos of Battle Reina's ship darted between massive asteroids, weaving in and out of enemy fire. One cruiser turned toward them, its energy beams cutting across the void. But humans did not fight like the predictable patterns of the Valar. Fire the ion nets, Rena shouted. Trap their engines. The nets shot out like webs, entangling the cruiser's engines. It spun helplessly, vulnerable to follow-up attacks. A converted mining freighter rammed the side of the ship, breaching its hull. The Valar crew scrambled, but the humans struck again and again, using the terrain and unpredictability to their advantage. Even when a ship was damaged, its crew improvised. Lyra's engineers rerouted power from the engines to the weapons, giving their vessel one last surge to fire a critical shot. Each small victory built momentum, and the morale across the fleet soared. A turning point. The enemy command realized that this was no ordinary raid. Their forces were outmaneuvered, attacked from angles they hadn't predicted. Lord Karvik's ship monitored the battlefield, his glowing lines pulsing with irritation and disbelief. How can this be? He demanded. Their fleet is tiny. Their ships are weak, yet they hit with precision beyond expectation. An officer hesitated. My lord, they are unpredictable. They anticipate us. Their movements. They are learning faster than we expected. Karvik's eyes narrowed. Humans are adaptive, yes, but they are mortal. One more strike and they will crumble. He was wrong. Humanity was not crumbling. Humanity was rising. The heart of the attack. Rena's plan was simple but daring. She aimed for the heart of the enemy station, a massive energy core that powered weapons, communications, and shields. If they could take it down, the station would be crippled for months, giving humanity space to strike elsewhere. The Dawnfire led the charge, weaving through debris and enemy fire. Lyra's engineering team launched drones that latched onto the core's outer casing, dismantling protective layers. Explosions ripped through the structure, and energy beams flared wildly as the station's defenses faltered. Rena watched calmly. "Hold steady. Keep the pressure! Remember what we fight for." Her crew, tired but resolute, executed every maneuver perfectly. They had trained for this, and now the training paid off. The core's shields fell and the station's power faltered. Within minutes, it was nothing more than a smoking husk drifting in space. The enemy response. Karvek's face was unreadable as reports poured in. "The station. Destroyed?" he demanded. "Yes, my lord. Entire supply grid disabled. Several cruisers lost. Human forces. Stronger than expected," the officer answered. Karvek's glowing lines pulsed faster, a sign of his rising agitation. "Mobilize reinforcements. Crush them before they learn more. They must not survive to unite further." But it was too late. The humans were already moving. The destruction of the station was only the first blow. Across the system, their allies prepared for coordinated strikes. The resistance had grown far faster than the Valar anticipated. Humanity's unique strength. What made humans dangerous was not just courage or cleverness, it was unpredictability and determination. They did not follow rigid patterns. They adapted to every obstacle. They improvised and learned from every failure. On the battlefield, this was deadly. A human ship might feign retreat only to return from an unexpected angle. Mines disguised as debris exploded at critical moments. Small crews used every tool at their disposal, turning weaknesses into advantages. Rena knew this was what gave humanity an edge. "The enemy expects predictable moves," she said to her crew. "We are not predictable. We are human, and humans never give up." A coordinated assault. While Rena led the main strike, other fleets hit supply convoys, enemy patrols, and communications hubs. Europa, Titan, and Mars each contributed ships. Even hidden freighters from Earth's occupied cities joined, disguised as civilian traffic until the moment they struck. In every battle, humans showed ingenuity. One squad used gravity wells near Saturn's rings to trap enemy ships temporarily. Another set ambushes along asteroid belts using debris as weapons. Every move, every attack, chipped away at the Valar's confidence. Humanity was no longer a silent, defeated species. They were a storm rising from the ashes. Victory and fury. After hours of battle, the human fleets regrouped. Ships were battered, engines sparking, and some crews were exhausted. Yet the result was clear. The enemy station was destroyed. Several cruisers had been lost. Supply lines were in chaos. Communication grids were down. Humanity had struck a powerful blow, showing that they could not only survive but fight back with precision, intelligence, and courage. Rena allowed herself a small smile. "Today we proved what it means to fight for every breath, every world, every life. Humanity is alive. Humanity is dangerous. And humanity will not stop." Elias grinned, clapping a hand on her shoulder. "The Valar thought we were finished. They were wrong." The enemy's Shocklord Karvek sat in silence watching the reports. His lines pulsed with tension, his usual calm replaced by unease. "Humans. They are stronger than we predicted. They adapt faster, coordinate better, and strike harder. We cannot underestimate them again," one of his officers asked carefully. "My lord, should we retreat?" Karvek's eyes glowed brighter, sharp with anger. "No, but we must rethink our approach. They are not just survivors, they are a force, and a force that grows stronger with every spark." He did not yet realize the truth. Humanity was no longer just fighting for survival. Humanity was fighting to rise. The rising fire across the hidden colonies, the news of the assault spread like wildfire. On Mars, miners repaired old freighters for the next strike. On Europa, engineers prepared weapons and supplies. On Earth, whispers of rebellion grew louder in every city. The Valar had thought they had extinguished humanity. Instead, they had ignited a fire, And now that fire burned brighter than ever. Rena watched the stars from the bridge of the dawn fire. She knew that this was only the beginning. The strikes, clever and precise, had shown humanity's potential. The enemy had seen the fury of humans and it had shaken them. A storm was coming. And when it arrived, the galaxy would witness humanity not as a defeated race, but as a rising force unlike any other. Rena's voice was quiet but fierce. Let them watch. Let them see. Humanity has risen in fury, and we will not stop until we are free. And in the silent void of space among the stars and wreckage, the first true wave of humanity's resurgence spread across the system. A wave that could not be ignored, a force that no enemy could crush. The void of space stretched endlessly, dotted with stars and drifting debris, but humanity no longer moved like scattered sparks. They moved like a wave gathering force across the system. Ships from hidden colonies, repaired freighters, and makeshift corvettes converged under a single goal: reclaim freedom and show the galaxy that humanity could not be broken. Captain Rena Ortiz stood on the bridge of the Dawnfire, her eyes scanning the combined fleet now orbiting Saturn. Hundreds of ships had answered the call. Miners, engineers, farmers, and former soldiers, all had become part of a unified human force. Their numbers were small compared to the Valar's vast empire, but their courage and ingenuity made them a storm the enemy could not ignore. "We are ready," she said softly, almost to herself. Her voice carried the weight of all those who had fallen, and the hope of all those still alive. Elias Kane beside her nodded. They thought humanity was finished. They were wrong. Every planet, every colony, they've seen the spark. Now they'll see the fire. The final assault begins. The target was clear. The largest Valar fleet in the sector stationed near the outer moons of Saturn. Its mission was to suppress human activity, enforce occupation, and crush any resistance. To the enemy, this fleet represented total control. To humanity, it was a symbol, the last barrier to freedom. Rena addressed the fleet over the comms network. Her voice carried over hundreds of ships. Today we fight not just for survival. Today we fight for every world taken from us, every life lost, every dream deferred. The enemy believes we are weak. They believe we are finished. Let's show them humanity rises stronger than ever. Cheering erupted across the network. Engineers, miners, and civilians manned stations ready to take action. Ships powered up, weapons hummed, and the human fleet moved forward like a single, determined organism. The battle in Saturn's orbit, the Valar fleet appeared as massive, jagged shadows against the glowing rings of Saturn. Hundreds of ships, armed and confident, awaited what they believed would be a simple victory. Rena's fleet approached cautiously, using the asteroid belts and ring debris as cover. The humans had learned from previous battles. Patience, strategy, and unpredictability were their strongest weapons. Divide and confuse them, Rena ordered. Use every angle. Hit their weak points, and never give up. Small corvettes darted in and out, drawing enemy fire. Larger freighters moved with precision, laying traps and disabling shields. Engineers aboard the fleet deployed drones that sabotaged enemy engines, while human pilots used gravitational anomalies from the rings to maneuver in ways the Valar could not predict. The enemy fired with fury, but the humans were clever and coordinated. Every move was unexpected. Every attack was calculated. Chaos reigned, but it was chaos on humanity's terms. The turning tide hours passed. Explosions lit the void like stars in motion. One by one, human ingenuity turned the tide. A fleet of converted freighters managed to breach the shields of the largest Valar cruiser, sending a wave of cascading explosions through its hull. Lyra Vance, leading a squadron of engineers and modified fighters, disabled the communication grid of the Valar command ship. The enemy could no longer coordinate effectively. Confusion spread across their ranks. Rena's voice was calm but commanding over the comms. Keep pushing. Every strike matters. Every maneuver counts. We fight not because we are the strongest, but because we refuse to surrender. The Valar began to falter. Their confidence cracked under the relentless ingenuity of humans. Ships retreated, some destroyed and others immobilized by clever traps and sabotage. The human spirit shines amid the chaos. Humanity's unique strength became clear. They adapted faster than the enemy could predict. They improvised when weapons failed, repaired ships under fire, and continued attacking despite exhaustion. One small team on a damaged corvette managed to reroute power from life support to propulsion, giving their ship one final surge to fire a critical shot at an enemy cruiser. Another crew used debris from destroyed ships to block an enemy formation, creating confusion that allowed Allied ships to escape a trap. Every act, no matter how small, contributed to the greater victory. The humans were unpredictable, relentless, and united by a singular purpose: survival, freedom, and pride in their species. Reyna watched the display, pride swelling in her chest. "This is what they never understood," she whispered. "We are not just survivors. We are humanity." The enemy retreats, Lord Karvek observed from the flagship of the Valar fleet, his glowing lines pulsing faster with irritation and alarm. "Impossible," he growled. "How can this be? Their forces are tiny, yet they move with coordination, precision, and fury." An officer hesitated. "They are different, my lord. Not like any species we've fought before. They adapt. They anticipate. They strike harder than expected." Karvek's eyes narrowed. "Then we retreat, for now, but we will not forget. We will destroy them next time." The Valar ships disengaged, leaving the human fleet in control of Saturn's orbit. Humanity had struck a blow no enemy could ignore. They had risen from the ashes of defeat and proven their spirit was unbreakable. Victory. Across the system, news of the victory spread like wildfire across human-controlled sectors. Hidden bases cheered. Survivors on Mars and Titan prepared their own fleets. Even on Earth, whispers of defiance became open acts of rebellion. Factories sabotaged enemy equipment. Messages of hope passed from town to town, and citizens began reclaiming their cities. Humanity was no longer fragmented. They were a force united not by politics or technology or wealth, but by the unbreakable spirit that had survived every challenge. Reyna looked at the stars, remembering the first days after the fall of the Unity's flame, when hope had been fragile. Now it blazed. Humanity had not only survived, they had become stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. The message to the galaxy standing on the bridge of the Dawnfire, Reyna addressed the fleet one final time. Her voice was steady, filled with pride and authority. "The Valar thought we were finished. They thought we were broken. They thought we would kneel. But humanity does not kneel. We rise, we fight, we endure. And today we have shown that the spirit of humanity cannot be crushed." Cheering erupted across the fleet. Engineers, miners, pilots, and soldiers all celebrated together, united by a common truth. They were alive, and they were unstoppable. A new dawn as the battle ended. Ships drifted into orbit, repairs began, and survivors worked side by side to rebuild what had been lost. Humanity's rise was not just about revenge, it was about reclaiming what was theirs, about proving that they could thrive against any obstacle. On Earth, children looked up at the night sky and imagined the brave humans fighting across the system. Parents told stories of Captain Reyna, of Lyra, of the small crews who had defied the Valar. Every story became a lesson in courage, hope, and ingenuity. The Valar might have thought they had destroyed humanity, but humanity had risen from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever. A future forged in fury, Reyna stood once more on the bridge of the Dawnfire, looking out at the stars. Ships from hidden colonies moved with precision, crews busy at work, and signals of hope flashing across the system. "We will not stop," she said softly, turning to Elias. "This is just the beginning. Humanity has risen, and we will continue to rise until we are free." Elias nodded, a proud smile on his face. "The enemy will remember today. They will remember what humans are capable of. They underestimated us, and they paid the price." Reyna's eyes shone with determination. "We will continue to rise, and the galaxy will never forget humanity's fury." Above them, the stars stretched endlessly. Humanity had fallen, yes, but from that fall a fire had been born, and that fire would burn brighter than ever, lighting the way for all who refused to surrender. The Valar thought humanity was finished. They were wrong. Humanity had not only survived, they had risen, and their fury would echo across the galaxy forever. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars and billions of worlds, yet in recent years it had grown strangely quiet. Once the Orion Coalition had stood as the greatest alliance known, uniting hundreds of species in peace and trade. Their fleets patrolled the trade routes, Their cities shone with light, and their scholars believed that no outside threat could ever challenge their unity. But then the silence began. It started at the edge of mapped space. Small colonies went dark. At first, leaders thought it was a problem with long-distance communication, something simple and technical, but soon entire systems stopped responding. Merchant ships never returned. Patrol fleets vanished. The silence spread, creeping inward like a shadow no one could stop. The truth finally came when a single refugee ship staggered into Coalition space, its hull cracked, its crew exhausted. They told the story in trembling voices. The enemy was called the Cathar, beings of metal and fury who moved without pause or mercy. They were not explorers, not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were something older, something that consumed. Planets fell before them in hours. Orbital stations were shattered in minutes, and no plea for peace was ever answered. The news spread across the Coalition like wildfire. For the first time in centuries, fear ruled every world. Fleets were assembled, but the Cathar crushed them. Cities that had stood for thousands of years burned in silence, their lights extinguished forever. One by one, proud species known for their wisdom and technology vanished into history. Hope faded like a dying star. In the high halls of the Coalition Council, leaders argued endlessly. Some wanted to surrender, though no one knew if surrender was even possible. Others wanted to scatter and hide, sending ships far into deep space. But wherever they turned, the shadow of the Cathar followed. The galaxy's greatest alliance was breaking apart, and everyone knew it. Still, in desperation, they did the only thing left to do. They sent signals. Countless distress calls were launched into the dark, each one carrying the same message. We are falling. Please, if there is anyone left who can hear, help us. Most species ignored the calls, too afraid to involve themselves. Others had already been destroyed before the message reached them. But one of those signals, weak and broken, traveled further than most expected. It reached a small blue planet circling an ordinary star, far from the Coalition's grand center. That planet was Earth. At first, humanity almost dismissed the message. Many believed it was a trick or a strange echo of space. The words were fractured, full of static, and the descriptions of an unstoppable machine race sounded like something from an old science fiction novel. But when the message repeated again and again, it became clear. Someone was truly calling for help. Humanity had changed much since its early spacefaring days. They were no longer bound only to Earth. Colonies had grown across Mars, Europa, and scattered exoplanets beyond the solar system. Their fleets were not the largest nor the most advanced in the galaxy, but they were practical, adaptable, and designed by people who refused to give up easily. The governments of Earth gathered in emergency councils. Debates raged. Why should humanity involve itself in a war it barely understood? The Cathar sounded unstoppable. What chance could humanity possibly have? Many wanted to remain silent, to ignore the call and hope the storm would never reach them. But others remembered history. Humanity had faced disasters before, wars and struggles that should have destroyed them, yet somehow they endured. Their nature was not to surrender to fear. Slowly the argument shifted, not from should we help, but how can we help? In the end, a decision was made. Humanity would not stand by while entire civilizations fell into silence. If the Cathar could not be stopped, then at least resistance could be offered. If hope was dying across the galaxy, then humanity would carry it. Engineers worked day and night modifying their ships for long-range war. Soldiers volunteered in numbers greater than expected. Scientists studied the broken signal again and again, trying to learn all they could of the enemy. Across Earth and its colonies, a single phrase spread among the people. If they call, we must answer. Meanwhile, far across the stars, the Coalition continued to collapse. Worlds were abandoned, and fleets that had once been symbols of pride were now only wreckage drifting in silence. Refugees spoke of despair so heavy it seemed impossible to breathe. For them, the idea of rescue was nothing but a fading dream. Then one day, strange ships appeared at the edge of a broken system. They were not sleek and beautiful like the grand designs of the Coalition. They were practical, rough, and scarred from countless trials. The surviving species looked upon them with disbelief. "Who are they?" asked a counselor on a distant world. The answer came across the stars, spoken in steady voices from those human ships. "We are from Earth. We heard your call, and we will fight." For the first time in many years, silence was broken, not by fear but by something different. It was not a promise of easy victory nor a boast of power. It was something far more precious. It was the return of hope,